It started as a normal shift. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the rhythmic click of keyboards, the low murmur of voices. All familiar sounds that promised another unremarkable day in the heart of the city's emergency operations center. Then, the call came in. Sarah, a seasoned 911 dispatcher, sat upright in her ergonomically designed chair, her posture a testament to years spent tethered to a console. Her headset, a permanent fixture, rested comfortably over her ears, its foam padding softened by countless hours of urgent pleas and mundane reports. At 38, her face bore the faint lines of concentration, etched around eyes that had witnessed the full spectrum of human crisis, albeit through a filter of static and tinny voices. She possessed an almost preternatural calm, a quality honed by the constant need to remain an anchor in the storm of someone else's despair. Her fingers danced across the keyboard with an effortless precision, logging details, dispatching units, her mind a well-oiled machine processing information at lightning speed. For Sarah, the daily grind was a predictable ballet of the ordinary. She'd handled everything from frantic reports of a lost cat, a fluffy Persian named Mittens, who'd escaped through a slightly ajar window, to the more pressing, though still routine, fender bender on the interstate, where frayed nerves were the most significant casualty. Her voice, a steady, reassuring contralto, had guided countless callers through panic attacks, provided directions to lost tourists, and patiently explained the difference between a medical emergency and a stubbed toe. The thrill, if one could call it that, had long since faded, replaced by a deep-seated professional satisfaction in providing a vital service to her community. It was a job that demanded focus, empathy, and an unwavering ability to compartmentalize the often harrowing realities of others. The digital clock on her monitor glowed, marking the slow march of the afternoon. Outside, the city thrummed with its usual chaotic energy, oblivious to the quiet control center that served as its nervous system. Sarah took a sip of her lukewarm coffee, its bitter taste a familiar comfort. Another call icon flashed on her screen, a small, blinking square of light amidst the array of active incidents. It was just another incoming line, indistinguishable from the dozens she'd answered that morning. There was no immediate urgency in its appearance, no flashing red alerts or priority codes, just a simple, unassuming signal waiting to be acknowledged. Yet, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift occurred within Sarah, a tiny tremor of anticipation, a whisper of the unknown that often accompanied the truly unexpected. She took a slow, deliberate breath, pressed the answer button, and uttered the standard greeting, her voice calm and professional. 911, what's your emergency? The routine was about to be shattered, though she couldn't possibly know it then. The silence on the other end stretched for a beat too long, pregnant with an unspoken tension that would soon unravel into chaos. The next few hours unfolded with the predictable cadence Sarah had come to expect. She navigated through a series of calls, each demanding her attention, yet none truly breaking the rhythm of her routine. First, a man with a booming voice reported his miniature poodle, Fifi, had gone missing from his meticulously manicured backyard. Sarah, with practiced ease, gathered a description, the last known location, and offered advice on contacting local animal control, her tone empathic but firm, reminding him to check under the porch one last time. Moments later, a slightly hysterical teenager called about a minor fender bender in a supermarket parking lot. A scraped bumper, no injuries, just a dispute over who was at fault. Sarah efficiently dispatched a non-emergency unit, her instructions clear and concise, ensuring both parties remained calm until assistance arrived. Each interaction was a testament to her efficiency, a demonstration of her ability to distill chaos into manageable tasks. The quiet hum of the dispatch center served as a constant backdrop to her work. The gentle clicks of keyboards from her colleagues, the low murmur of their voices as they handled their own streams of emergencies, and the occasional whir of the air conditioning unit created a symphony of controlled activity. It was a space designed for focus, yet one that allowed for a certain detachment, a necessary buffer against the emotional weight of their collective duties. Sarah glanced across the room, catching the eye of Mark, a newer dispatcher, who offered a quick, reassuring nod. He was still finding his footing, occasionally looking to Sarah for unspoken guidance, a glance that acknowledged her experience and steady hand. She offered a small, almost imperceptible smile in return, a silent affirmation of the shared responsibility that bound them all. Her fingers continued their dance across the keyboard, entering data, updating statuses, closing out incidents. The digital clock on her monitor continued its steady march, indicating the shift was past its halfway point. A momentary lull descended upon her console, a brief respite between the demands of the public. This was her window, a small luxury she'd learned to anticipate. With a practiced movement, she pushed back from her workstation, the wheels of her chair gliding almost silently on the carpeted floor. Her destination, the small, brightly lit break room, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee often lingered. She needed another cup, a warm anchor in the sea of electronic pulses and disembodied voices. The bitter taste of her previous cup still lingered, a reminder of the mundane comfort it offered. As she poured herself a fresh mug, the steam rising invitingly, she allowed her mind to drift for a moment. She thought about her evening plans, a quiet dinner, perhaps a book. These small moments of normalcy were crucial, a way to compartmentalize the day's events, to prevent the collective anxieties of the city from seeping too deeply into her own life. The soft clinking of the ceramic mug against the saucer was the loudest sound in the break room, a stark contrast to the constant electronic chatter of the dispatch floor. She took a slow, deep breath, inhaling the comforting scent of coffee, feeling the warmth of the mug in her hands. It was a moment of peace, a brief interlude before the next wave of calls. She knew the quiet wouldn't last. It never did. But for now, this simple act felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of control in a job that often felt like a constant reaction to the unpredictable. Little did she know, the next call waiting on her console would shatter this comfortable rhythm entirely, ushering in a type of chaos she had not encountered in years. The quiet hum of normalcy was about to be obliterated by a single, desperate voice. Sarah returned to her desk, the warmth of the coffee mug a small comfort against the subtle chill of the air conditioning. The blinking light on her console, a fresh incoming call, pulsed with a rhythm that felt slightly off from the usual. It wasn't frantic, nor was it particularly urgent, just a steady, insistent glow. She slipped on her headset, adjusting the microphone, and with a practiced motion, accepted the call. A faint crackle filled her ear, followed by a silence that stretched for a beat too long. 911, what's your emergency? She inquired, her voice calm and steady, a familiar anchor in the digital void. A shaky, almost inaudible voice responded, barely a whisper against the static. I need help. Sarah's brow furrowed slightly. The voice was breathy, laced with an undertone of fear that sent a tiny prickle down her spine. It wasn't the usual panicked shout or distraught sob she often encountered. This was something more insidious, a quiet desperation that spoke of suppressed terror. "Can you tell me what's happening, sir?" She pressed gently, her fingers already hovering over her keyboard, ready to log the details. "There's a situation," the voice managed, the words fragmented, as if each one required immense effort. "At 1420 Hollow Creek Road. Hollow Creek Road." Sarah quickly typed the address into the system. It was a remote area, known for its sprawling, isolated properties, not a place for casual disturbances. "Can you describe the situation for me, sir? What kind of help do you need?" she asked, her tone unwavering, despite the growing sense of unease. She needed specifics, something tangible to work with. Another pause, longer this time, filled only by the faint, almost imperceptible sound of something else in the background. It was a metallic scraping, soft but rhythmic, almost like a distant, distorted clock ticking. Sarah strained to hear it more clearly, but it faded in and out, teasing her perception. It's a game, the caller finally whispered, the word hanging heavy in the air, utterly out of place. A game. Sarah's mind immediately tried to process this incongruous detail. Was it a prank call? A child? But the voice, though shaky, clearly belonged to an adult. The fear was too real, too palpable to be feigned. "A game, sir? Can you explain what you mean?" she asked, her voice maintaining its professional calm, though internally a small alarm bell began to chime. The word didn't fit, creating a jarring dissonance with the caller's obvious distress. It was like a piece of a puzzle from an entirely different box, forced into the current one. He wants us to play," the voice continued, now with a hint of something more than just fear, a profound weariness, a resignation. "If we don't, bad things happen." The background noise shifted then, the metallic scraping momentarily replaced by a muffled thud, quickly suppressed. Sarah's grip tightened on her coffee mug. This wasn't a prank. This was something far more sinister. The vague details, the remote location, the strange, almost cryptic language. It all coalesced into a disturbing picture. The caller was holding back, either out of fear or instruction, providing only fragmented pieces of information that hinted at a deeper, more terrifying reality. Her training kicked in, pushing aside the burgeoning unease. She needed to extract more, to piece together the narrative before it was too late. The quiet hum of the center, which had once been a comfort, now felt like a shroud, insulating her from a darkness she was only just beginning to perceive. The coffee, once a source of warmth, now felt lukewarm, forgotten in her tightening grasp. He has guns!" The caller's voice suddenly sharpened, a raw edge cutting through the previous whisper. The word game now twisted into something horrifyingly clear. This wasn't a child's play. It was a desperate plea from someone trapped in a nightmare. Sarah's professional facade, usually an impenetrable shield against the world's chaos, fractured. Her jaw tightened imperceptibly, a subtle shift that only she would notice. But her voice remained steady, a lifeline for the terrified individual on the other end. "Guns? How many suspects? How many people are with you, sir?" she commanded, her tone now laced with an undeniable urgency, the gentle inquiry replaced by the directness of a dispatcher facing a critical incident. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, the rhythmic clatter a stark contrast to the sudden silence that had fallen over her internal monologue. The address for 1420 Hollow Creek Road flashed on her screen, now highlighted in an ominous red. Instantly, she initiated the protocol for a high-priority dispatch. "Units to 1420 Hollow Creek Road, possible hostage situation, armed suspect," she broadcasted, her voice cutting through the ambient hum of the dispatch center, now carrying a new, sharper edge. The words hung in the air, transforming the quiet space into a crucible of impending action. Across the room, heads began to turn. Her colleague, Mark, a burly man with a perpetually tired expression, paused mid-sip of his coffee, his eyes locking onto Sarah's screen. The shared glance was wordless, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in atmosphere. The mundane calls that had filled the air minutes before, a barking dog complaint, a fender bender on Main Street, now seemed utterly trivial, fading into insignificance against the developing crisis. "There are 5 of us," the caller stammered, the fear now fully unleashed, stripping away the earlier forced calm. "He has a shotgun and a pistol. He's making us play for our lives. The chilling confession sent a jolt through Sarah. 5 hostages, 2 weapons. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. The metallic scraping sound returned in the background, clearer this time, accompanied by a low, guttural laugh. Not the caller's, but someone else's, someone sinisterly close. Sarah's commands became even more precise, more rapid. Units, be advised. Multiple hostages, at least 2 weapons confirmed. Suspect is actively engaged. Approach with extreme caution. Establish perimeters. Prepare for tactical entry. Her voice, though urgent, maintained a remarkable clarity. Each word a crisp instruction designed to cut through the noise and chaos of what was rapidly unfolding. She was a conductor, orchestrating the initial response, her every action a calculated move in a desperate dance against time. The dispatch center, moments ago a picture of quiet routine, now pulsed with a focused intensity. Other dispatchers, sensing the gravity of the situation, began to silently adjust their own workflows, preparing to back up Sarah, to handle the inevitable influx of related calls, to reroute non-critical traffic. The quiet hum was replaced by the low thrum of adrenaline, the rapid-fire clicks of keyboards, and the hushed, urgent tones of colleagues offering support, their eyes glued to their own screens, tracking the responding units. Sarah continued to press the caller for more details, her questions a barrage of critical inquiries. Can you describe the suspect? What is his build? What is he wearing? Are there any injuries yet? Each answer was a precious, terrifying piece of the puzzle, building a clearer, more dangerous picture. The caller's voice was growing weaker, punctuated by gasps, as if speaking was becoming increasingly difficult. The muffled thud returned, louder this time, followed by a sharp cry, quickly stifled. A cold dread seeped into Sarah's bones. This wasn't just a threat. It was active. The game had already begun. The quiet efficiency of the center had dissolved, replaced by a tense, vibrating energy, a collective breath held in anticipation of the unknown horrors unfolding at Hollow Creek Road. The coffee mug, forgotten, slipped slightly in her trembling hand. The floodgates opened. Almost immediately, other calls began pouring in, each one a frantic, fragmented piece of the unfolding nightmare. A neighbor, shaken, reported strange noises and a vehicle parked erratically near the property on Hollow Creek Road. A worried parent, unable to reach their child who was supposed to be at a gathering there, called with mounting panic in their voice. Then came the most devastating ones. Desperate pleas from individuals inside the house, their whispers barely audible over the growing cacophony of fear and muffled shouts. These corroborating accounts didn't just add layers. They solidified the horrifying reality, transforming Sarah's initial apprehension into a stark, visceral understanding of the peril. Sarah found herself navigating an impossible labyrinth of choices. Every unit dispatched to Hollow Creek Road meant fewer resources available for other emergencies across the city. Yet, this was no ordinary emergency. It was a rapidly escalating crisis with lives hanging in the balance. She had to decide which units to prioritize, how to manage the limited police force, fire department, and paramedics, all while attempting to glean more intelligence from the increasingly terrified callers. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, updating unit statuses, relaying new information, her mind a whirlwind of protocols and contingencies. The emotional toll, a subtle undercurrent before, now began to surface, etching itself onto her features. A flicker of raw fear, quickly masked, darted across her eyes as she listened to a child's muffled cry on one of the incoming lines, a sound that pierced through her professional facade. The dispatch center had transformed into a command hub of controlled chaos. The low thrum of adrenaline had intensified into a palpable hum, a collective tension that vibrated through the very air. Mark, her colleague, was now taking other critical calls, his usually relaxed demeanor replaced by a grim focus, his voice sharp and authoritative as he diverted non-essential traffic. Other dispatchers, their eyes wide with concern, continued to feed Sarah information from their own screens, a constant stream of updates, potential escape routes, and descriptions of the suspect's movements gleaned from the desperate whispers of those trapped inside. Then came the specific, chilling detail that truly escalated the stakes, confirming Sarah's deepest fears. A new caller, her voice a thin thread of terror, managed to gasp out a horrifying piece of information. He just shot someone, she whispered, the words barely audible, followed by a gut-wrenching sob. He said it's to show he's serious. He's making us watch. A cold dread, far deeper than before, gripped Sarah. This wasn't just a threat of violence. It was active, indiscriminate, and brutally public. The game, the initial caller had mentioned, was taking a horrific turn, transforming into a gruesome spectacle of power and fear. The confirmation of a shooting sent a jolt through the entire room. Sarah's commands, already urgent, now carried an almost desperate edge. Active shooter. Repeat. 1 victim confirmed shot. Expedite tactical entry. Medical units stand by. Staging area established at the intersection of Maple and Oak. Her voice, though strained, remained incredibly clear, cutting through the rising panic. She could feel her heart pounding against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the backdrop of sirens wailing in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. The metallic taste of fear filled her mouth, yet she pushed it down, focusing solely on the voices in her ear, the blinking lights on her screen, and the lives she was desperately trying to save. The weight of every decision, every word, pressed down on her, an almost unbearable burden. The quiet efficiency of the center was now a distant memory, replaced by a relentless, terrifying race against time and an unseen, merciless adversary. The crescendo of chaos reached its apex. Sirens shrieked, then faded into the distance as units arrived on scene, their urgency palpable even from Sarah's remote vantage point. Over the radio, terse, clipped commands from the incident commander began to replace the frantic reports of the initial responders. Perimeter secured, came one voice, followed by another. Entry team in position. Sarah's breath hitched, her eyes fixed on the map display, watching the digital icons of police units converge on the building. The silence that followed these updates, however brief, was more terrifying than any scream, pregnant with the unspoken horrors unfolding within. Then, a new voice, calmer, more authoritative, broke through the tension. Suspect apprehended. Scene secure. The words, though expected, still hit Sarah with the force of a physical blow. A collective sigh, almost inaudible, rippled through the dispatch center. The pressure that had been building for what felt like an eternity began to dissipate, leaving behind a profound, aching emptiness. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her shoulders slumping, the tension in her jaw finally releasing. She took a slow, deliberate breath, tasting the stale air of the room, acutely aware of the ringing silence that now seemed to envelop her station, even as the center around her still hummed with subdued activity. The grim details began to filter in, relayed by officers on the ground, their voices somber and weary. The initial shooting victim was confirmed deceased. Several others were injured, some critically. The game had indeed been a deadly one, leaving a trail of shattered lives and indelible scars. Sarah listened, her mind meticulously processing each piece of information, assigning medical units, coordinating transport, ensuring every protocol was followed. Her professionalism, though shaken, held firm, a testament to years of training and countless emergencies. Yet, beneath the surface, a profound sorrow began to well up, a heavy weight in her chest. She imagined the faces of the victims, the terror in their eyes, the desperation in their voices. She thought of the families who would soon receive the devastating news, their worlds irrevocably altered by one man's senseless act. The lives she had tried so desperately to save, the ones she couldn't, replayed in her mind like a macabre highlight reel. Her hands, usually steady and precise, began to tremble uncontrollably as she typed out a final report, her fingers fumbling over the keys. A single, silent tear escaped the corner of her eye, tracing a path down her cheek, a small, private acknowledgement of the human cost of the chaos she had just navigated. She quickly wiped it away, embarrassed by the display of emotion, even though no one was truly looking at her. The noise of the center, which had escalated to a crescendo of urgency, now gradually subsided, like a receding tide. The frantic energy had drained away, replaced by a heavy quiet, a respectful hush that settled over the exhausted dispatchers. The urgency of the immediate crisis had passed, but the aftermath, the processing, the grim reality of what had just transpired was just beginning. Phones still rang, but they were routine calls now, minor incidents that seemed utterly trivial in the wake of the tragedy. The vibrant, pulsating heart of the emergency response system had slowed, its rhythm irrevocably changed. The air, once thick with adrenaline, now felt dense with unspoken grief and collective exhaustion. Sarah sat there, motionless for a long moment, the headset still clinging to her ear, the weight of the world pressing down on her. The silence, once a welcome respite, now felt like a shroud, amplifying the echoes of terror that lingered in her mind. It was a silence that spoke volumes of the lives lost, the innocence shattered, and the profound, enduring impact of a single, devastating call. Sarah took a deep, shuddering breath, the kind that tried to draw strength from the very air around her, but found only emptiness. She slowly removed the headset, placing it gently on the console, the plastic feeling strangely cool against her fingertips. Her eyes, red-rimmed and weary, scanned the blinking lights on her dispatch board, each one a silent testament to countless unseen dramas unfolding across the city. The chaos had receded, but its imprint remained, a phantom limb ache in her very soul. She consciously tried to relax her shoulders, which felt like they had been bearing the weight of an entire building, and rubbed her temples, hoping to dispel the dull throb that had taken root there. A figure appeared beside her, casting a soft shadow over her console. It was Mark, her colleague, his face etched with the same exhaustion that mirrored her own. He didn't speak, just offered a small, knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement of the crucible they had both just endured. In that shared glance, there was an understanding that transcended words, a bond forged in the fires of crisis. They had navigated the storm together, each a vital link in the chain of command. And now, in its aftermath, they simply existed in the quiet camaraderie of shared trauma. Mark's presence, though wordless, was a small anchor in the turbulent sea of her emotions, a reminder that she wasn't entirely alone in carrying this burden. The quiet hum of the dispatch center, which had been so violently disrupted, had indeed returned. But it was different now. The gentle whir of computers, the low murmur of distant conversations, the occasional click of a keyboard, these were no longer just background noise. They were echoes, reverberating with the memory of screams, the urgency of commands, the chilling reports of tragedy. The routine, once a comforting blanket, now felt like a thin veil, barely concealing the raw, exposed nerves beneath. Every blink of a light, every soft ring of an incoming call, seemed to hold a hidden threat, a potential for another descent into the abyss. Sarah's gaze drifted back to her console. The blinking lights, once merely symbols of incoming tasks, now felt imbued with a deeper, more ominous meaning. Each illuminated button, each flashing line, represented a life, a crisis, a moment where her voice, her decisions, could mean the difference between existence and oblivion. The detachment she had meticulously cultivated over years, the professional distance that allowed her to function efficiently in the face of human suffering, had been irrevocably breached. The line between observer and participant had blurred, leaving her exposed to the full, unvarnished impact of the events. She thought of the caller, the shaky voice, the chilling mention of a game. She replayed the sequence of events, every word, every decision, scrutinizing them with an almost obsessive intensity. Could she have done more? Said something different? Her mind, though weary, refused to rest, caught in a relentless loop of what-ifs and might-have-beens. The adrenaline, which had propelled her through the crisis, was now dissipating, leaving her body feeling heavy and drained, her thoughts sluggish and clouded. The weight of the headset, which had felt so natural just hours ago, now seemed oppressive, a conduit not just for communication, but for the collective pain of the city. She imagined the families, the victims, the ripple effect of the violence spreading outwards, touching countless lives. Her role as a dispatcher, once a source of quiet pride, now felt like a heavy responsibility, a constant reminder of the fragility of peace and the sudden onset of chaos. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that this call, unlike the countless others she had handled, would not simply fade into the annals of her memory. It would linger, a permanent scar on her consciousness. She pushed herself away from the console, the chair squeaking softly in the sudden silence. Standing, her legs felt unsteady, as if she had just disembarked from a long, turbulent journey. She looked around the room, at her colleagues, some still on calls, others quietly processing their own experiences. Each one carried their own invisible burdens, their own stories of heroism and heartbreak. The quiet hum of the center, once a symbol of normalcy, was now a constant, low thrum of remembrance. One call, she mused, her voice barely a whisper in the vastness of her own thoughts, was truly all it took to turn a routine shift into an indelible mark, a permanent echo of chaos. The world outside the dispatch center, she knew, was waiting, oblivious to the profound transformation that had just taken place within these four walls. Sarah finally pushed herself away from the console, the quiet scrape of her chair against the tiled floor, a jarring sound in the now almost silent room. Her shift, which had stretched into an eternity, was finally over. Her body felt alien, heavy and uncooperative, as if each muscle had been individually weighted down. She moved through the hushed hallways of the dispatch center, her footsteps echoing softly, each sound amplified in the stillness that followed the frenetic energy of crisis. The fluorescent lights hummed above, casting a stark, unforgiving glow on the polished linoleum, illuminating nothing but the path ahead, yet her mind remained stubbornly fixed on the path behind. The weight of the day, an invisible, crushing burden, settled deep within her bones. It was a cold, pervasive ache that no amount of rest would truly alleviate. This was not the familiar exhaustion of a long day, but something far more insidious, a weariness that permeated her very soul. She passed the empty break room, the faint scent of stale coffee, a ghost of the routine that had once defined her existence here. Each closed office door, each silent workstation, seemed to hold its own untold story of stress and survival, a testament to the quiet battles fought within these walls every single day. There was a brief, silent acknowledgement within her, a recognition of the permanent change that had taken root. The Sarah who had walked into the center that morning, the one who had greeted her colleagues with a casual nod and a half-smile, was gone. In her place was someone altered, someone who carried a new kind of knowledge, a deeper understanding of the world's fragile balance. This new Sarah was marked not by visible scars, but by an internal landscape forever reshaped by the echoes of distress and the stark reality of human suffering. Stepping out of the building, The cool night air hit her face, a stark contrast to the climate-controlled stillness inside. The world outside the dispatch center seemed strangely unfamiliar, tainted by the events she had just witnessed from afar. Car headlights streamed by on the street, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded, the lives that had been irrevocably changed. People walked dogs, chatted on phones, their laughter drifting on the breeze, mundane acts that now seemed almost surreal, disconnected from the raw, visceral experience she had just endured. The ordinary sounds of the city, once comforting, now felt like a thin veneer over a deeper, more chaotic reality. She gazed up at the stars, a vast, indifferent expanse of glittering lights. They offered no solace, no answers, just a quiet, cosmic reminder of her own insignificance in the grand scheme of things, yet simultaneously the immense responsibility she had felt. The lasting impact of such a call, she knew with a chilling certainty, was not something that simply faded with the passage of time or the end of a shift. Some calls never truly ended. They just echoed. They resonated deep within the psyche, becoming a part of the fabric of who one was, shaping perspectives, informing decisions, and forever altering the lens through which one viewed the world. The chaos might subside, the immediate danger might pass, but the echoes lingered, a perpetual reminder of the thin line between order and pandemonium, and the profound weight of being the voice on the other end of that desperate plea.